Hey guys, wanted to do a video on my end game forbidden Rite build. So first of all, I'm following a guy called Manny's build. He plays SSF. I took his build. I put some very basic gear into it. I had basic gloves, basic chest piece, couple of pieces of gear, and the build killed everything. And it worked really well. Since then, I've been farming these currency maps with 4 risk, so you know it can do tier 16.5 with 4 risk. It has 90 all res, it has block spells, block attack, and yeah, I know everyone and their mother has done this build, but I've not played it before. It's probably going to get nerfed next league, so if you want to give this a go and enjoy it whilst it's available, I recommend it. I'll run you through the gear and kind of how things have gone. And maybe run through some finicky things. But the general reason I wanted to play the build was 90 all res with block feels really nice. It's CI. It can run all map mods. And I also rejigged my tree with these 4 points to get the caster mastery when you could put them into crit multi up here. But I wanted that caster mastery so I can open chests in Abyss. Now, here's my gear, okay? I've been farming currency maps. If you want to take a look at some of the stats on screen, we managed to get a mirror drop, 84 divines, exalts, keys, and so with a mirror, I went and purchased my first ever mirrored item, which are these gloves. Now, I didn't mirror them myself. I purchased a mirrored copy. These to mirror were 1 mirror plus 300 divines. I bought them outright for 1 mirror. I killed everything in the game on these gloves, but infinitely worse. So I had socketed gems are supported by level 18 faster proj, socketed gems are supported by level 20 faster casting, 3.5 crit and 50 multi, and they had nothing else. They cost about 15 divines to make. You probably could have bought them cheaper, and I killed everything on that. All the Ubers, Uber Maven, Uber Deathless Cirrus, all the Ubers, and then eventually I was like, what can I do with my mirror? I don't want to take it into standard, and I mirrored these. Okay, so yes, what these are like every single mod elevated, perfectly divined on finger silk gloves, and they're pretty damn crazy, but I killed everything in the game without them. Now let's get them out of the way, because obviously people are going to look at those gloves and be like, that's ridiculous, but genuinely you just need the cheaper version. These are just me having min-max for the first time. I have a Void Battery wand with lightning warping. That's so obviously I can blink around. And ideally you val it for AoE. I've tried that quite a few times. I've never got lucky, so I've just bought one with cast speed, crit chance, and enchanted it. There's a Will Clash. Can val these for +1 power charge. Inside are my auras, Withering Step, Purity of Lightning, Enlighten. Basically, we're using a melding, so we're getting our Purity of Lightning as high as possible, and then everything else matches that. Whispers of Infinity allows us to play this build, meaning things cost energy shield rather than life, so you can play CI, and you can just spam it for free. I'll be honest, I don't even understand how this functions, because it says that skills cost energy shield instead of mana or life. But this basically just has no cost. And so you can just fire this. I'm really not sure how this works, I'll be real with you, but you just have no cost, so you can just spam away. On it, we have a Malachai's Loop. This gives us +2 power charge. Now what you can do, if you want to be really tanky, is get a energy shield with the Shaper mod. Recover 5% of energy shield on block, and get like a 500 ES shield, lose a little bit of damage. That's a big option now. Now that I've got these gloves for damage, I could easily lose this shield and get more energy shield. It's a possibility, but I've just kept it. And inside is Frost Shield. Coil and Whisper, we'll get to that. But the main crux of this is the build struggles with stats. It struggles with strength and dex. And so on a helical ring, if you craft on 25 strength and dex, it becomes 42. I used an essence multiplier for crit multi, and I got the fire res I needed, and this had fractured int. Now, interestingly, fractured int apparently is expensive. I bought this as a base that was the same price as a normal helical ring, but it just had fractured int on it. And then I spammed my essences. The int you don't need, it's not like a stat you need, it's just int equals kind of damage in ES, right? The chess piece, I purchased this for 50 div. Originally I was running like an 800 ES one. Honestly, the reason I purchased this was because it had +3 max lightning already crafted on, and I couldn't be bothered doing Orb of Dominance and all of that to get that right. So that has int, it has a res that we need, and percent attributes. So that's everything that we need there. And inside, one of the main reasons I'm playing this build is the Bladefall. So when you spam Bladefall here, every time it hits and your curse runs out, you get a soul with the Coiling Whisper. Now, the Coiling Whisper and this interaction is all you need. And then the enchant window of opportunity for skill duration. This has Bladefall, less duration, temp chains, swift affliction, hex tech, and flame dash. That's basically all it needs to work. You don't need another ring. You don't need any extra tech. Sometimes your Soul Eater might run out, and sometimes I just let it hit a few times and I run around for a second and then I just carry on mapping. Most of the time I'm one-shotting stuff anyway, but it is nice to run around with basically permanent Soul Eater. On the ring I got Cannot Be Poisoned because we don't need Chaos Res. Mage Blood, that's kind of... This is a Mage Blood build. With Flasks, avoid shock, Ellie res, so we're capped resistance, move speed, and reduce curse. You can also run something if you don't want the move speed, like damage with regen, and you're permanently regenning. And for the big juiced maps, it's actually pretty nice. But I like move speed. You can also use a Bottled Faith, which I was using for a long time. I just decided to run a Wine of the Prophet because it's quite fun. But it's really not that impactful on this build because you've already got Soul Eater anyway, so the Headhunter mod you get from this is not that great because the excitement of this flask is you wear a Mage Blood and you get Headhunter, but we kind of have that anyway. But it does give some nice damage. You can see like that's a useless one, Val skills. This one gives crit multi. This one gives spell lightning damage to spells to attack, so you can see there 1.3 million. When it runs out, you know, you can see here, this one gives, you can see there, it just gives random buffs, right? And it's just kind of nice to use. There's nothing crazy going on here, but yeah, that's kind of how it's working. I just wanted to use it for some fun. Now, we have in here Flesh and Stone, Arctic Armor, Discipline, and Enlighten. I decided to be cheap, and rather than run, this was originally when I had like no money, I ran a level 3 Enlighten, and I bought a pair of +1 Relicash because that was much cheaper than buying a level 4 Enlighten. These were 2 Divines, no idea what they cost now. Let's have a look. Looks like they're with +1, 10 Divine. So obviously that's much cheaper than buying a level 4 Enlighten. And then we have these mirrored gloves. Again, you can just use the much cheaper version. Obviously I dropped a mirror, so I used those gloves, and inside it is Forbidden Soul. Awakened Spell Echo, which I just bought because I had spare money. Power Charge on crit and Greater Volley. You can just use normal Spell Echo. And I killed everything in the game with the cheaper gloves without Awakened Spell Echo. So you're just kind of firing around like this, and the orbs go all around you, and you just pretty much kill everything. And you have 90 res, and the way it's working is because you have this flask that is Avoid Shock that interacts with Storm Shroud, which means you are ailment immune. Things to note about the build, okay? In here, you can put a Light of Meaning that has Energy Shield. That's a few hundred divine. I haven't bothered with it. The main setup and the main, like, cost, if you want to call it cost to get this running, is Cluster Jewels. I crafted mine myself. And this one I purchased. So I had Fractured Unspeakable Gifts. This was about 12 divine. If I look now, Fractured Unspeakable Gifts is 65. What I did was I got Fractured Unspeakable Gifts and I just reforged Chaos and also used Chaos Fossils until I got something that I needed, which is Overwhelming Malice and Evil, because then that puts Evil at the back, which you don't technically need. 1 second. Yeah, and I reforged Chaos. Now, the awkward thing about this is you don't need any of these, right? None of these are imperative, but Unholy Might basically gives you 25% chance to inflict Withered, which obviously is really good. This back node is not one that you want to take. I'm just taking it because at the moment I'm leveling up, and I won't bore you with that, but I'm just taking it. But you don't actually take this one. And you want these front two, which is Unspeakable Gifts and Overwhelming Malice. And on this side, Touch of Cruelty and Unspeakable Gifts. Now, the awkwardness is sort of getting these clusters. It does take a bit. They can be expensive to purchase if we look at just purchasing this. 17 divines, they've come down a lot. The reason I'm doing 2 Unspeakable Gifts is it lets me effectively not take Profane Bloom, and then instead I can get Forbidden Power or Vile Bastion. So that's kind of where we are, so to speak. We just have a Militant Faith, so we get Inner Conviction, so we get spell damage per power charge. This has Aura Effect and Resist, but you can see that we're quite overcapped on resist, apart from cold. So the gear in here is like, I've made it very tight on gear, so I can fit the upgrades in that I want. But obviously, you can kind of rejig it however you need. You know, if you're really struggling on resist, well, a few bits of extra chaos damage here doesn't really matter. You could just put a resist jewel in here. Last jewel I'm using is a Watcher's Eye. I was using 30 on hit. This lets me run no leech maps. And then recently I upgraded to have regen, which they're saying is 200 div. I paid 60 div. No, in fact, I paid 45 div. And I don't even get the regen most of the time because I'm running like no regen maps. That's why I have the leech. And so I know this is a bit of a weird, convoluted build guide. I'm going to give you a POB in the description. Things to note, like Runegraft, auras affect allies. So basically I'm giving everybody energy shield, but I deal 10% more chaos damage to enemies which have energy shield. Reduced attributes and increased global defense. If you're really struggling for attributes, you can get rid of this. This is like a little setup. The Red Nightmare Jewel means that fire res equals block. So we change these strength nodes to be fire resist. And then we also take this block node here. So the min-max effectively is a nice helical ring, big chest piece, ES, int, attributes. You know, you've got your mage blood. You can get as good a gloves as you can get. I was running 20 faster proj, 18 cast, 50 multi, and that was it. And I killed the whole game on it. You can get cluster jewels. You know, I could get a cluster jewel that doesn't have chaos res because I don't need it. I could get a cluster jewel that doesn't have fire res because I no longer need that. I could swap that to be cold res. And then as a result, I could probably get rid of this that has cold res. This, by the way, is quite interesting. Enduring Composure gives us endurance charges when hit. We sort of hit ourselves, and you can see we generate endurance charges up there. So the build just runs really, really well. Everything in the game it can kill, and it can do 4 risk maps with absolutely no problem. So if we this has tentacles, but I'll give you a showcase, right? Because I know people like a showcase. So put your map in, 4 risk scarabs, and another abyss. Now, I might die in this. That's entirely possible, but it will always clear it, basically. My mercenary, if you're interested, is not the best. It has despair and zealotry, and crafted on it, I made it a hunter helmet that has -9 to nearby, a garb so I'm not slowed and crit, a dying breath so I get basically damage and stuff. Eternal struggle gives it cull with serpentine spellslinger. These boots, a Combs binding, and this is just for enfeeble. I need to change these, but I'm lazy. And then this is just a resist ring. So yeah, despair and zealotry. I can actually tell you the correct one you're meant to use, which is, and I'll put both POBs, by the way, in the description because there's 2 POBs, mine and his. In the note section, mercenary, cruel mistress with zealotry and envy, or a shock ambusher with zealotry and skitterbots. You can get a garb, Combs binding, or hunter ring with despair on hit, a Dodri's damning, rare gloves with unnerve implicit, shaper seed, influence anoint, leer cast, more of conquest, dying breath, or a 60% zealotry rare staff. I could do that. If you're on an ambusher, 2 × 40 zealotry wands. He's got a whole section of how to craft for stuff, so I'll include his POB. But I'll demonstrate how it works, yeah? So, if you can see the mods here, 172% more ele damage. Unstable tentacles, which is a bugger. 60% reduced curse aura effect. 25% less AoE. Drowning orbs. Like, this is a horrific low map. It's not an enjoyable map, and it's probably like one of the worst ones, to be honest. Unstable tentacles, the drowning orbs, all of that stuff. But you can see the caster mastery. If it wants to work, it will open the chest. Now, you start off your Soul Eater, you kind of like run around, you can see that the Soul Eater stacks go up, right? That's kind of like how it works. The way this is working is I normally just let myself run into a pack like this, and then I get full Soul Eater stacks, and then I'll just begin the map. And you can see that even with all this extra life on a tier 17, you can see that I'm just really dunking on stuff. And I've just found it to be really chill. I don't have to aim. There's not really a lot of buttons to press. This is going to be a bit of an annoying map, just because, yeah, you've got the tentacle fields that are going to blow me up. And you've also got drowning orbs, which are awful, awful game mechanic. I typically don't run those, but with risk scarabs, you know, sometimes they appear. But I've just been farming these and slowly leveling up. You might get the occasional death just because some of these maps sometimes are just crazy. But yeah, you don't have to aim anything. It's really tanky. As you can see, I've got 45 Soul Eater stacks all the time. And it's just been really, really chill. And I've very much enjoyed it. So I've kept playing it. Again, it's one of those builds where like you really don't have to invest a lot of money into getting it going. Once you've got 45 Soul Eater stacks and you have a pair of gloves, like a cheapish pair of gloves, you can just kill the whole game, because you know how it feels when you've got permanent Soul Eater. It just gives so much damage, so much cast speed, everything that, yeah, just feels great. Obviously, I'm having to pay attention here because I'm constantly getting hit by drowning orbs, which is not fun. But yeah, the build, everything, it just works, and I find it really enjoyable. You've obviously got your pops and your explosions, right? You've got you can travel around there, you know, blow everything up. Frost Hand, don't want him. Like, I'll probably get unlucky now and die, but I haven't really ever died to an Exile, so and yeah, this is kind of what I've just been doing for currency and fun. And it also can do all Ubers. Like, I've done every single Uber in the game deathless. I can farm them, there's zero problem. and it's just chill. I you know, like sometimes you just find a build that you enjoy. I know everybody's been playing this, but it's nice to just be CI, to be immune to any form of chaos damage. It means you can do, I do 10 wave ultimatums basically every time. There's not really any map mod that wrecks you. Maybe no block or something like that, but apart from that, you can basically do everything. And yeah, this is just how the build's been going. I've just been running around in these maps, farming currency, enjoying myself. And somebody asked me yesterday, they were like, you know, can you do a build guide? And I felt like it wasn't really needed because everyone's done a build guide on this, you know. It's just basically for Forbidden Rite, a lot of energy shield with the amulet, and off you go. That's the long and short of it. You get as much energy shield as you can, get the stats that you need to level up the gems, and that's it really. Everything else is just bonus on top. And yeah, it's just been an enjoyable process, shall we say. So at the moment what I'm doing is I'm farming currency, so I'm just doing like mad currency maps. It's who knows if it's profitable, I don't know. I'm just playing for the big drop. I'm not trying to like make money or anything. So as you can tell, bit of an awkward map with all these fields and all these orbs, but it handles everything. You know, you don't really take any damage. If you do take damage, you have a ton of leech, you have a ton of life, you know, energy shield pool if you want to call it life. Yeah, and you basically don't come close to dying. You just chill through all the maps, and it's nice. So that's kind of how Forbidden Rite has been playing for me. Obviously I'll leave 2 POBs. You can see my POB. Also, you can go for the full hog. You could change every single int node to be an energy tattoo, which maybe I'll do. You know, maybe I'll buy a Light of Meaning and get a little bit more energy shield. But we'd be talking, I might go from 12.2k to like 14k. I could get a bit of a better shield, like I say, because I've got these gloves. I don't really need as much damage as I've got. So I'd probably be better off losing some damage, getting a little bit more energy shield. But I'll be honest, it feels nice to have a lot of damage. Especially in softcore, you want to do some bosses quickly. You know, sometimes you just want to blow a boss up. So I've gone for more damage at the cost of some energy shield, but it still has more than enough. So I suppose I'll leave it there. I just wanted to give you a bit of a showcase of how it works. This is a tier 16 pretty well rolled map with 4 risk scarabs, all effect on the Atlas tree, and you can see like I haven't really come close at all to losing any sort of HP or anything. It's just simply because I've got drowning orbs in these orbs that it's taking a little bit more focus. But yeah, it's pretty chill. So that's kind of the build. Again, POB in the description. If you've got any questions, you can come to the Twitch channel and ask. It's just a bit awkward to get set up with the stats and res. After that, once that's going, it's just a case of getting more and more energy shield, really, and world's your oyster. So I'll leave it there. Won't make it drag on too long. Just wanted to give you a full map showcase so you can kind of see how it plays out, and that was the reason I wanted to play this build. Was CI, can do most map mods basically, and it can open the chests, because having to click chests would be awful, so I wanted to avoid that. Yeah, so that was Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice. This is one of the worst maps I've done. I'm normally averaging 2 to 3 divines a map. This has not even got a tink, I don't think, in it. No streamer RNG for me. So yeah, there we go. Any questions, just ask away. 2 POBs in the description. Cheers.